Thank you to VINNOVA and other colleagues for inviting me. I'm Swedish, but I will speak in English because I've been asked to do so. There could be people here or out there who don't master Swedish, and as you will see in my presentation, there are actually quite a few ERC grantees who are non-Swedes who are working in Sweden. So there is reason to sort of respect the international aspect of this. So just a few words before I start about myself. I have my background at the Karolinska Institute. I did molecular genetics there a long time ago. But I've been 20 years in the Commission in Brussels, now in 2014, and almost all those years I worked in the societal challenge. If you talk about Horizon 2020 structure now, the societal challenges part in the health, all those years, until 2013 when I was given the opportunity to lead the scientific affairs unit in the European Research Council, executive agency, I should add, because it's really the structure that implements the program. So the unit I'm leading, with about 70 people, are the people who are actually conducting the evaluation with the help of the peer reviews, as you will hear more about. So that's the activity. And it covers all scientific areas in all fields. My presentation, hold on if I can sort of get this going. Yes. First of all, I covered the bit basic facts about ERC, but you've heard a good introduction now, so some of the things I'll skip over, and you have also copies of the slides. Then the ERC achievements, actually generally from the start of ERC. ERC started at the beginning of the 7th framework program. Before that, it didn't exist. So it's already a little bit of a pilot. How could we run something like this? Which is, I should add here, maybe more of a scientist-driven initiative than the rest of the program. And then a bit of ERC in Horizon 2020. What are the novelties? And then finally a bit about Sweden in the ERC. So first of all, the basics. So it is an autonomous funding body, rather autonomous, I would say. I mean, we're still reporting to the European Commission, DG Research and Innovation, but we are reasonably independent in our actions. We have a reasonably free mandate, and we are listening to the Scientific Council, which is a collection of high-level scientists, which are dictating our actions. We'll come back to that more in detail. So we have sort of two fathers or mothers, if you like. On the one hand, it's the Commission that gives us a framework for the operations and they do certain things. And on the other hand, it's a Scientific Council with a high-level scientist. That is something which is rather unique to the ERC. So the societal challenges, where I worked before, for example, doesn't have that high-level Scientific Council of that strength. We do have advisory groups, but not of that same sort of caliber as the ERC, in the ERC. And it was set up in 2007 at the beginning of the 7th framework program. So this notion that the whole ERC is led by scientists is really what makes the sort of the difference in the perception of how does ERC differ from the rest. There's one of them. The other is, of course, that we fund bottom-up research. So when there's a new work program, it's not that exciting. There's not which topic is going to be on the agenda this year and which is out, what's in, what's out. We don't have this type of discussion. Everything is possible. Everything is welcome. We just want to see top-level applications, very competitive applications being submitted to us, and that's our aim. So we found excellent researchers of any nationality. You can be any nationality actually from the globe, but you need to work in Europe, at least part. And it's all based on, of course, annual competitions. Now, well, okay, sorry. So we talk about simplifying here. One researcher, one host institution, it's one project and one selection criterion, which is excellent. This is a very simple way of thinking about it. We're not talking about consortia here. We're not funding consortia. There is a slight deviation to that notion. I will come back to that later on. But it's really not about consortia. It's about identifying excellent individuals who have excellent ideas and support them in a generous way. So the grants are actually quite substantial, as you will see later on. The ERC operations, I would say, up to now have been quite a success. When I go out and speak about the program, I know that we are very much admired. At national levels, there are countries who try to copy our system because they think it's good. So this is very nice, and I must say, although being new in the ERC, I'm quite proud to be working there, and I really hope that we will continue to be able to make sure that we fund really top excellent research. So how does it work there in the context? Well, we have the European Commission, as I said, and the role is there. It provides, of course, a financing through the framework program. And it also guarantees the autonomy and assures the integrity and accountability of the ERC, and also does the formal adoption of the work program. But the contents is worked out by the scientific council that I mentioned before. You see a little picture of them there in the middle. It consists of 22 prominent high-level researchers that is appointed by the Commission, but the Commission doesn't choose them. They're actually appointed by another independent committee who appoints these people on a 4 years once renewable basis. And what do these people do? Well, they established our work, the strategy, the annual work program, the call for proposals, evaluation criteria. They discuss all sorts of problems that we encounter in the running. We have an open discussion with them on a very regular basis, I would say. But they also select the experts, the peers, that are going to review the proposals. And that's an essential difference in comparison to, for example, societal challenges, where it was the colleagues working in the administration who were selecting the peer review experts from our side. So that's a fundamental difference. It also works quite hard to ensure the communication with the scientific community. Now, the ERC Executive Agency, where I'm working, together with my 388 colleagues, is located in Brussels. It's not part of the European Commission as such. It's an agency which is closely linked to DG Research and Innovation, as I mentioned. So it does have this a little bit of autonomy, and it has the two fathers or mothers, the two up there that I was alluding to before. And what we do is actually we implement whatever we're being told by the Scientific Council within the framework of the rules given to us by the European Commission. So we organize the interviews the evaluation of all the proposals, which includes a lot of interviews. Actually, I'll come back to that also later on, which is also quite unique for the ERC. And then we run the grant management. We run and follow up the projects throughout their lifetime. And we also carry out communication activities, like I'm here, for example. That's one of those. These are the members of the Scientific Council. We have a new president, Jean-Pierre Bourguignon. He started on the 1st of January this year, and prior to that we had Helga Novotny as the president. We also have here the vice presidents, Pavel Exner and Karl-Henrik Heldin from Sweden, actually, and also some new members, but you have this in your slides, so I'm not going to go through more than that. What we have in terms of the various funding schemes, it's actually just broken up. If you think of a career path of a scientist, a young scientist coming out doing the PhD, working 2 years, being very productive, can start to apply. First at the starting rounds, which covers a period from between 2 to 7 years after the PhD. The funding that can be obtained to this person is a maximum of 2 million euros for 5 years. It's quite a lot of money. It allows you to support a small team. After the 7 years, you enter the consolidated grants. A bit more money, 2.75 million, same thing for the rest. And then the advanced grant, which doesn't really relate to any sort of time period, but is considered to be really for the advanced and quite competitive. You need to be very successful. Maximum 3.5 million euros for 5 years. Then we have the synergy grants, which is something quite new, tested first in the calls of 2012. This is not collaborative research, but it does allow you to have more than one partner. But these partners can be anywhere. You can even have the partners in the same university. So you don't need to have these several countries, and it's certainly not consortium. The fundamental concept difference here is that in a synergy grant, you work to develop one idea together. It's not, I do this thing, and you do this thing, and we come together. It's not that. It's not collaborative research. It is a joint idea, and that's taken some time to communicate that message. And it was hard to get it across, but we seem to be successful now with that. However, it's an instrument that needs to be evaluated before we continue. So it's not going to be on offer this year, and the Scientific Council will tell us whether it will come back or not in the future. But there, 15 million euros for 6 years. And now we have the proof of concept, which is really a small grant that is attached to those successful projects that seems to be generating something that you could take further for further marketable innovation, for example, 150,000. So those are the schemes. They have been developed over the years. I'll come back to that later on. So it's all about the principal investigator. It's about the individual. It's about the CV on the one hand. The CV of the person selling yourself as a successful, productive individual with lots of ideas. And then it's the idea on the other hand. So the person and the idea. Those two are the main components that we're talking about here. As I mentioned before, any nationality, age, all these things doesn't matter really. But there is a requirement that you actually work in Europe. So let me just check my notes that I don't forget something that I wanted to say at this point. Well, I just want to repeat again that it's really all fields. We do have, because we need to work, we need to organize our work, we have 25 panels in which we conduct the evaluations. And those panels have some keywords. I'll show them later. But it doesn't mean that you're only allowed to work on those subjects. I think the Scientific Council has made a big effort in trying through the keywords to cover everything that you could possibly think of. Now, if somebody comes up with something new, which is not covered in any of those keywords, we need to make sure that we accommodate that proposal somehow. We also really pay a lot of attention to accommodating so-called interdisciplinary research. Ideas that maybe has an element of physics and engineering at the same time as it has some humanities component. Anything is welcome, and we make sure that we take care of that. So I would say the keywords would be everything, bottom up, high risk, high gain, 5 years, and no consortium. And then the host institution needs to be in Europe. Grants are portable. Very often, actually, when somebody succeeds with an ERC grant, they get an offer from somewhere else, a better offer, better conditions, higher salary. So very often we get a request to move, and this is fine. We don't have a problem with that. Sometimes the host institutions have a problem with it, but we think it's a good thing to help and stimulate these people out there. And the host institution can also be private. It's very often forgotten, but it's possible. So the goal of the evaluation is really to select the most exciting, most innovative frontier research proposal. We're talking about frontier research. It doesn't necessarily have to be basic research. Huh? Most frontier research would be basic research. But sometimes people say, ERC is about basic research. Yeah, fine, but we actually do also fund applied research. But it needs to be frontier. It needs to be new ideas. It cannot be just collecting a little bit of data out there and putting it all together. That's not good enough. Maybe very important to address a societal challenge, for example, to collect data and compare and see what's going on. But that's not really what we're talking about here. This is new ideas, new concepts. So the single evaluation criterion we have is excellence. And the peer review is really, as I said, by high-level scientists identified and selected by the scientific council and not by the bureaucrats. Right, and as I already mentioned, we have the 25 panels, but it's only for internal operational reasons that those exist. Anything is welcome. The work is then conducted at the level of these panels. And each panel obviously has a chair, and there are approximately 12 to 16 members in each panel. Now, in addition to that, the panels are supported by external referees who are providing specialist competence to the process. I'll come back to that as well. So the panel members, overall, it's about 375 per call. They're mostly Europeans, but actually 14% of them are from outside Europe. Half of those are from the US and the rest are from other countries. And the referees, you can see 2,000 per call, which means that for the specialized reviewing, these people don't come to Brussels, for example. They just review 1 or 2 or maybe 3 proposals because they provide a very specialized competence to that particular proposal. So that's a completely different role than the more sort of generalist function of the panel members. And if you like, you can compare the function of the remote referees to like when you're reviewing journals, for example. So how is it then conducted? I would say this is quite an important slide for you. We have 2 steps always, but there's only one proposal. A full proposal is submitted at the beginning, but the full proposal isn't read. In step 1, only the synopsis and the CV of the principal investigator are read. And it's analyzed only by the panel members. And the panel member needs to cover, or the panel needs to cover quite a broad scope of issues. So it means, by definition, that the panel members need to be a bit of generalists. Huh? So the applicant needs to think about, I need to first sell my idea in a synopsis to people who are generalists, so that I have a chance to get selected and pass to the second step. So that's a challenge there. Have a strong CV and a good synopsis that appeals to the generalists. If you're lucky and you're retained for the step 2, and here usually the panels strive to select about twice as many proposals as can be funded at the very end. So you're lucky if you go to step 2, then the whole proposal will be read. And that's where my colleagues will send out the proposal to those remote referees to provide the specialized knowledge for readings. And then they provide the comments, in addition to reading by the panel members. Then there is an interview, not of everyone, but of the starting grants and the consolidated grants. We interview the young ones. The old ones, we think they're famous enough, we don't need to see them. But, so they have to come to Brussels and present. And that's very interesting, actually, because then you can say, well, a good speaker, nice way of communicating, probably can sell his or her ideas much better than somebody who's boring and mumbling, although he has a better idea. And that is exactly where the big discussion is. Yes, can you sort of through charm and being a good salesperson sell your ideas better than somebody who is maybe has actually higher quality scientific program but is unable to communicate it? And there's a lot of discussion about this actually in the panels. But you shouldn't underestimate, if you're scientists yourselves or if you're helping scientists, to actually emphasize the importance of being able to not only communicate your idea, because half is to present your research, the other half is to be able to answer critical questions, and they are tough. The panels ask very tough questions to the candidates. Now, if you survive that, then you're fine. And that's about 50% roughly chance of surviving that step. And then you get to the rank list of proposals. So the panels will decide, okay, these are the proposals we like. If there are more than there is money for, well, they will have a very short reserve list, but we don't want to have everybody on the reserve list and then tell them at the end of the day, we didn't have money for you. So there will be, in most cases, a certain number of people who will say, well, we would have liked to fund you, but unfortunately, we didn't have the money. And there was no point to put you on the reserve list because we knew that there wouldn't be enough money for all of you. They're called the A's, the non-funded A grades. And very often, what countries do out there, they say, oh, that's interesting. So we had applicants there who got A's. Maybe we can fund them. They've been so competitive at an international level, maybe we can dig around in our pockets at home and see if we can help them. So that's how it works. And very often, it's no guarantee that the home country will fund you. It's up to the home country to decide. But very often, it saves actually the countries a little bit of costs and effort also to do this. Let's see, did I? Yeah. So those are the panels that I mentioned, the 25. There are 9 in life sciences, there are 6 in social sciences and humanities, and there are 10 in physics and engineering. But as I said again, everything is possible. Actually, there's an error here. Number 2 has changed name. It's called now the Social World, Diversity and Common Ground. I spotted that after I sent this presentation to you. About the achievements over the years. As I said, it started with the launch of the 7th Framework Program. And as you can see, I'm not going to go through the details, but the number of different calls have grown. There's more and more things introduced every year. Now, it's nice to have a scientific council that has a lot of ideas, but I think we've gotten to the point now there we need to sort of consolidate, if I may use that word, and reflect. And that's what we're doing about the synergy grants. So it's not an offer for the moment. And we also have to be a little bit cautious that we don't offer too many mechanisms, too many instruments with the resources we have in the agency to run all these operations. If you see here the number of applications over the years. So we have the starting grants, 2009. That wasn't the first call, but we don't want to show you in the picture the starting grants of 2007 because there was skyrocketing of 9,000 applications. So everyone was in a shock stage. Small number of people in the ERC trying to work this through. So that sort of disrupts all the statistics if you include that call. But if you compare now the more recent years here, you can see there's yet quite significant increase, and that's why we had to break up in the end in 2013 the starting grants into starting grant and consolidator. It was just too many to cope with that. And the advanced grants, not quite the same increase, but nevertheless. This, I don't know if you can see it. Maybe, hopefully, you can see it on your handout. So this shows also the number of applications received, evaluated, and funded. It shows how the numbers go up. Consolidated grant, 2013. If you're interested, it's published today on the ERC webpage. I couldn't put that in the slide that I sent a couple of days ago here. There are 10 for Sweden in there, I can say. Not, well, I mean, it just shows this is a popular program, increase in popularity, I would say. And we're glad that it's a popular program, but we also, unfortunately, are aware of the fact that there's less money out in many member states, which brings us a lot of applications to the ERC, because in the end, it's the only chance many people have. And that's something I will come back to also later on. So, after 6 years, we can conclude that we are highly recognized by the research community. I mentioned that before. I'm proud to work at the ERC. People like us, it's great. After concluding everything, we will have about 4,500 projects running, with 58 nationalities represented so far there, which is quite a lot. The success rate is only, on average, 12%. If you compare to all the submitted applications and what we fund in the end. So it's very, very competitive, which means that if you get an ERC grant, you have a lot of recognition. It's highly respected out there. 500 different institutions in 29 countries have been engaged as hosting institutions. But this is very interesting, actually. 50% of the grantees are located in 50 institutions. So it's an enormous concentration of this excellence into a limited number of institutions, which you could say excellence attracts excellence, yeah. And as I said before, there's quite an impact on national programs and sometimes a commitment to fund those we couldn't fund. And we are also relatively, I understand, efficient in the grant management and quite simple. Now, the grants per country of host institution, that is in absolute numbers. You can see the first blue line here, highest is UK. By far the highest number of applications. The higher number of grants. Then followed by Germany, France, Holland, Switzerland, Italy, Israel, Spain, and then Sweden. 146 here. If we add today's consolidated grants that have been published today, well, 156, the correct number should be. But that's in absolute numbers. Now, you have to, of course, compare that to how many applications there were in the first place and look at that. Who are these most successful institutions that everyone is concentrated? That you see here on this table, that those that have at least 30 grants are these higher education institutions. Are mostly located in the UK, in Switzerland, in Holland, in Israel. And then at the bottom here, you also have research organizations such as the CNRS, Max Planck, and others. And for example, Oxford, Cambridge, 111, 110 grants each, quite impressive figures. You see the breakdown also between the different types of research that they can attract. For example, Imperial College has a lot of life science and physics engineering, but nothing in social sciences, for example. So those are the top in Europe. Now, in terms of non-European grantees, who are they? Well, over the years, we've had quite an increase from the US, from Russia, from China. Now we're talking about the starting grants only here. These are in absolute numbers, they're going up. But that's not a surprise, because the total number of applications have gone up anyway. So if you look at the little chart in the middle there, you can see that roughly it's stabilized around 8% are non-Europeans. So actually come to work in Europe, in European institutions, and have been successful in starting grants. The same thing here for the advanced grantees. Overwhelming majority from the US and then some other countries, and that equivalent number is between 5 and 6% of non-Europeans. And the publications obviously have gone up as we collected the number, collected the projects, and they start to produce publications. It's a sharp rise in the output. So by now we have over 20,000 papers acknowledging ERC support, and they're published in international peer-reviewed journals. And of course, this will continue to rise because we're accumulating more and more and more. We're also very, very proud to have some highly distinguished grantees, Nobel Prize laureates, and others. We have a Swede there, Lars Klareskog, Crawford Prize 2013, and also Anne Hullier here, working in Lund. I'll show you a little film later on about her. So this makes us very proud. This is how we sort of can feel that we are actually able to identify some real top excellence out there through our program. The ERC is very active in going around spreading the information about the existence of the program. There's a global campaign, which is truly global, trying to go to other continents, saying, come to Europe. We have excellent conditions for you, come and work in Europe. We would like to see you doing your career there. There's good media coverage, and we also have quite a nice website, I would say, if I can say it myself. We have been participating in the AAAS, in Davos discussions, both the European and also the summer Davos, so-called, in China, and the Global Research Council meetings, of course. Now, a few words about Horizon 2020 here. So it was mentioned several times in the morning. I'm not going to repeat that. That's part of ERC is part of the excellence science there. It has a budget now of 13.1 billion euros, which is quite a considerable amount of money. If you compare to the 7th framework program, ERC had 7.5 billion, and now it's 13.1. It's quite a huge increase. Now, this worries us a little bit, working in the agency, I have to be very honest with you, because it seemed to send a message, so much more money. Now I have a chance. I failed before, but now I really have a chance to succeed. So I should maybe submit now. And I think in combination with the fact that there is very little money out there in many member states, that could be a dangerous message for us in that we have, again, perhaps a situation of being completely overwhelmed with proposals that we cannot fund, which would be a pity. We want to see excellence. We want to see really good proposals, but we want to be able to actually discourage those who are maybe not competitive enough and don't get sort of this message right. And the reason is, I'm going to jump there now. You see this slide here. The budget distribution over the years, which is a darker orange pillars, is not higher than we had in 2013. The reason why the total budget is higher is because we had so little money in the beginning. So this is the annual budget. The next few years is actually going to be just a little bit less than we had in 2013. And that's a very important message. So don't say, ERC budget went up from 7.5 to 13 million. Now everyone can be funded. It's much easier. It's not the case. So that's one of my main important messages that I would like to give to you. Go back here now. I think I actually covered that. So, so what are the novelties then in relation to previous years? Well, as I said before, we don't do synergy grants. We're going to look at that, evaluate it, see what it gives. But all the other funding schemes are available as before, and with the same sort of intervals and criteria and budgets as before. What is new is that we will have a quite severe resubmission restriction for those who fail. You may be aware that the top receives an A, the intermediate sort of receives a B, and then those who were rejected, totally rejected in first stage, get a C. Now, if you receive a C, you will have to reconsider during 2 years before you can resubmit again, and that's new. And that's one of the measures the ERC has taken, well, I would say the Scientific Council took, in order to help us to manage a possible increase of proposals for the future. So discouraging those who are not competitive enough, to allow them to develop their ideas, to think about it, to change their proposal, so they have to 2 years of abstention, and the Bs will have to wait for 1 year. So this is new, and the old rule said 1 year for the Cs only. Yeah, you can discuss whether it's a good or a bad thing, but at least it will perhaps select for the excellence. For the rest, there is not much change. The overhead is now 25%. And there's also an indicative budget for 2015 published already now. One thing I can say is that for the 2014 that has been published, as you can see here, this is a distribution of the grants and the amounts. Now, given the fact that the advanced grants has a higher amount per grant, you can see that the number of grants that's going to come out of that is lower. In fact, we expect to see from the starting grants, if you divide by the maximum per grant, or the average, what we usually fund, expect to see about 370 projects For consolidators, about 400, and for advanced grants, only 200. And the reason we have fewer of the advanced, which is going to be a bit tougher competition probably then, is that it's towards the end of the year, and we need to conclude the granting before the end of the year. But for the rest, it's not much difference. And then for the 2015, we will pay back to the advanced grantees a little bit. So, just a few words about Sweden here. So, excluding then what I mentioned before, the consolidated grant, which is published today, this is how it went for Sweden. Here you have the starting grants of 2007 included. You can see what incredible peak there was in terms of applications, but this was the same for every country. Yeah? So these are the evaluated proposals from Sweden, and these are the 146, again without the consolidated grants of 2013 included. And you can see the division between the three main domains: life sciences, physics and engineering, and social sciences, over the advanced grants first and then the starting grants. And Sweden here, circled in red, the success rate. And as I mentioned before, you have an overwhelming overrepresentation of UK grantees. Well, that's fine, but you have to relate it to the number of applications the country sends in, right? And if you look at that, your UK is not in the lead. They just send in a lot of applications. So actually it's France and the Netherlands who are among the EU countries that are leading, then followed by UK, Austria, Germany, Belgium, Denmark, and then Sweden, which has a success rate of 9%. Well, the real strong ones you found actually not EU member states. It's Switzerland and Israel that you see at the far end. Those are the real strong ones. And we can always speculate about why. And that's an interesting discussion. I'd love to hear some views about that, actually. So Sweden's success rate for the different domains: life sciences, physics, engineering, social sciences. Okay, it's not the 23% I heard from Eric in the morning on the overall FP7, by the way. It's actually quite less. So I think there's, again, if you, as a country, if I talk to you as Sweden as a country, there's reason to reflect on how can we become more competitive in ERC. I think that's, again, an interesting discussion that you may like to have. We can go on talking about how Sweden is doing here. These are the publications in top journals in relation to the number of grants. Well, as expected, I would say, nothing dramatic there. While UK is doing a bit worse than expected, and Germany is doing a bit better than expected. But for Sweden, it's fine. So among the grantees in Sweden, you can look at Swedes in Sweden. That would be the red ones here. And the non-Swedish people granted working in Sweden are the blue ones. And the green ones are Swedish people who have an ERC grant working outside Sweden. So as you can see, there are a few more people who arrived to Sweden from outside, who are funded, who are not Swedes, than Swedes who are left the country to work somewhere else and who are ERC grantees. And you can see the countries here as well. And you can see an interesting effect. Look at Switzerland there, for example, number 5. They have an enormous amount of non-Swiss people who are successful working in Switzerland. The UK as well. You say UK is so successful, but it's foreigners working in the UK, right? Whereas Germany have sent out a lot of Germans who has been successful somewhere else. That's quite an interesting figure to look at. Now I will show this again, the top 30 institutions in Europe which has more than 30. Why do I show it? Well, because Karolinska Institute has 29. So with the consolidated grants of today, let's see now my notes. With the consolidated grants today, Karolinska will have 31, will be on the top list. That's why I showed it there. And then we'll have a few also. Uppsala will have one more, Lund will have one more, KTH will have 3 more, Chalmers 1 more, Gothenburg 1 more, and Stockholm University 1 more. So this is how it is going for the Swedish institutions in ERC. Some few words about the proof of concept. Not much to discuss. I mean, it's as expected, I suppose. This is, well, you can say this is a measure of the grants a country has, how close are they to really marketing the results of what's being produced in there. So if you have a blue peak, you have more sort of market near activities, or you work in a country which stimulates this, which I think actually Sweden does quite well. And then finally, a few examples of projects. There are in the handouts as well. Swedish projects or projects run by foreigners working in Sweden also. I don't know if we have time, you decide, for a short film. Can I just click here, or how does it work?
Anne Lullier, professor in atomic physics at Lund University, has received a grant from the European Research Council. She has also received the UNESCO L'Oreal Prize for Women in 2011. Now we're going to visit her and her team in the lab.
Very early as a child I was very interested by natural sciences and mathematics. I like very much my work. I like to do research and to solve problems, to be in the laboratory, and I like to interact with my students very much, and I also like to teach.
I met Anne on a conference and I thought, oh, this is the woman I would like to work with.
She encouraged people around her to do their best, and they do it with a smile, and they are happy doing it.
Scientists use high-speed cameras to see the motions of the fast-beating wings in small flying animals. In the laboratory at Lund University, Anne and her team have managed to develop a new technique that makes it possible to track the motions of one of nature's smallest and fastest-moving components, the electrons.
Electronic processes are very important in nature in general, so what we do is really a new way to study atoms. So it's very interesting for fundamental research.
To see the electron movements, the technique has to be extremely fast. The scientists use lasers to create short light pulses in the attosecond range. 1 attosecond is about as short compared to a second as a second is to twice the age of the universe.
I mean, I have this vision to really follow these electronic processes in the time domain, and I think we are just at the beginning of that. Basic science is very important. All the big discoveries are really based on basic science in the first place. For example, the laser, or if we take even earlier, electricity, or this kind of thing. So it's very important to do basic science. Then I can also say that on the side of our research, we are pushing laser technology forward, and this also leads to application. It's really a research has to be done by a group, and it's very important this group can work efficiently together.
What has the grant from the European Research Council meant to your work?
It has meant a lot, really a big change for my funding. I have been able to triple my research group, go from 4 or 5 people to now about 15, and this is very important in our research to have this kind of critical mass.
I'm Fernando, I'm from Argentina.
I'm Piotr Daski, I'm from Poland. My name is Esben, I'm from Aarhus University in Denmark.
I like very much to have an international group, actually. The only thing I regret a little bit is that there are very few women in this group. It's mostly men. But this is changing, and we have recently recruited 2 female PhD students, so hopefully this will change with years. There are so very few women in physics at my level, and especially I would say in the Nordic countries. I think there should be more women to come into science. It should not change too fast, and there should not be positive discrimination. That's very important. It's important women come to these high positions in academia, but really the right women that have the competence. I think role models are important. I am sure that the fact that Marie Curie existed was important for me as a young girl. I knew that at least Marie Curie has made a career in science, and maybe I could also do that. So I think this is important.
I think she doesn't want to be seen as a role model, but I think she is one by definition, because she's a really successful woman in science who managed to have also a lovely family, and she balances and she has it all.
She has it all, and she received a prize, an award in 2011 for women in science. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to discuss with you in the afternoon, or maybe now. I don't know, as you like. Was question time? Is that now or later?
We open up for questions now.
Hello, I'm Ylva Bäcklund from Uppsala University. I have a question. You said that there is a tougher competition this year in the advanced grant due to something I didn't...
Well,
can you explain it again?
It all depends on how many applications we get, right? But because the budget is lower, so we will not receive, we will not be able to fund quite as many advanced grants in 2014 as we have been in previous years, because the total budget for advanced grant is lower and will go up again in 2015. Now, we had to reduce the number because of calendar reasons. The calendar says that we are offering the advanced grant so late in the year that we'll have to conclude the grants. And in order to be able to conclude the grants, we need to have fewer grants. So, but if we get fewer applications, because the budget is lower, there was not going to be a higher competition. So, sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
Rehane Dekhani, also Uppsala University. For former grantee holders of ERC, is there a special application procedure?
No, you can be a returning grantee. That is fine. But you need to have... I need to check the rules there.
This is a question from one of our research.
Yeah, you cannot have two grants running at the same time, but you can apply before.
Yes. And in that application, is there a specific procedure?
No, I mean, okay. So how are returning grantees? It's a good question actually, because we're beginning to see returning grantees, we call them. So people who have had a grant and whose grant is coming to an end. This is beginning now, and who will try again. Maybe you had a starting grant and now you want to apply as an advanced grantee, for example, or a consolidator. And it's possible, as long as you will not have your old project running when the next one starts, if you're lucky again. Now, so that's easy to calculate. But then the treatment, how are you judged? Now the scientific council has decided that a scientific career of whatever nature needs to be judged fairly. I mean, fairness is a main important principle. So if you have had a grant, an ERC grant before, of course you will be judged whether your research was successful or not. But if you've had an NIH grant, for example, you will also be judged whether you were successful or not. So it's not going to be, you had an ERC grant before, so we need to automatically fund you. Or very critically looking at, was she really successful or not? No, it has to be looked at very, very equally. An ERC grant or any other important funding from any other source, did it generate successful results? Were you successful? So we're really very keen to emphasize to the panels that they need to look at this neutrally and give everybody a fair treatment. So not special treatment either in a positive way or in a negative way. So, but this is not going to be totally easy to communicate, I think, or to maybe. But ERC grants is not sort of something which is different in that respect when it comes to the previous career. It helps you hopefully, to do good research. That's the whole point, to help you to do good research. And you will be judged whether you did good research. But if you got another grant from somewhere else, you need to have done good research with that as well. So the point is equal treatment.
Thank you.
And not two grants at the same time. This is not allowed. Yeah.
Hi. I have one clarification that I would like you to make, and then a question. The first is you mentioned the harder restrictions for the applications each year, and you said that the ones that get a grade C in step 1 will not be able to apply for the coming 2 years. But then you mentioned shortly about the ones receiving the B grade, that they won't be able to apply the year after that.
Yeah.
But that is to those that got the B both of this, either at the first step or at the second step.
Yes, sorry
right?
if I wasn't clear. Yeah, all Bs. All C, if you get a C, it's 2 years wait. If you get a B, either in step 1 or step 2, you have to wait 1 year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. My question is, you had a slide on the success rates for the different countries, and you showed the success rates for Sweden, which is quite okay for a small country, but we could do better. And I wonder if you agree that one explanation could be that we are not so good at actually recruiting external or scientists from abroad, because if you compare with Switzerland as you did, they had a much larger share of internationally recruited scientists. And I remember from an interview from actually the organization that is the most successful one in being granted ERC grants in Switzerland, the École Polytechnique in Lausanne. And the interview person said that Switzerland realized a long time ago that they don't, since they have a small population like Sweden, they don't have the critical mass at home to actually, get the best researchers from in-house. So they really put a lot of effort on recruiting people from abroad. Of course, they have a lot of a substantial investment on research and innovation, which Sweden, I would like to say, has quite a generous investment as well. So would you agree with that could be one explanation?
Yeah, it could be for Switzerland, clearly. I mean, look at this again here, this chart on the nationalities. Switzerland is absolutely extreme. Switzerland is the most successful in terms of granted application in relation to submissions, but they're smaller than anyone else when it comes to Swiss working in Switzerland, nationals working in their own country. Almost all of those are actually foreigners working in Switzerland. So obviously being given very, very good conditions, and that's a nice success story. So I like that. But look at Israel; they're also very successful. Almost everyone is Israeli. So I think it's very complicated. You have to look at each country and each situation individually. Israel has very few people who move, actually. Few people who arrive and few people who leave. And they're also very successful. So what we can say is that Sweden, although a very, very high proportion goes to research and innovation in terms of the gross national product, and Sweden is renowned to be a successful country for science, and we heard that 23% in overall in the framework program is a very high number. But here it doesn't stand out in the same way. But neither do the other small countries, as you said. I mean, it tends to be small countries. The other Nordic countries are also a little bit in the same situation. They're actually quite near each other. So you can speculate about what would be then. Should we try to copy Switzerland in the policies? Maybe yes. Should you try to become good at certain issues, so where you really foster the competence on certain selected fields and forget about the rest? I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I think it's very interesting to analyze and speculate about what drives this excellence, what drives people to really succeed here. I know that some of the very successful institutions offer a lot of training, a lot of support to the applicants that go on to the step 2. They get a lot of training for the presentation. They practice their presentation and the questions. They have panels, they have film teams, they have media communicating teams to support them to become very good at selling their stories. So it's a matter also of the choice of the institutions investing in this. I mean, if you have over 100 successful grantees, it's a lot of money for a host institution. And so it can be quite successful and quite important for them. So, but I don't have the answer. But I think it's an interesting idea for Switzerland, yes. So, other questions?
Ella Rydberg, Gothenburg University. I have a question regarding the panels. In the CERN framework, you had alternate 2 panels. So you could actually, even if you didn't know in beforehand, you could actually see what the panel was last year, and you can see that could come.
So the panel members, right, I didn't mention that, but it's no secret. So the panel members are, we have 2 cohorts. So they are operational every second year. In order to allow them to apply actually themselves, all right? It would be hard to attract anybody to sit sort of 5 years with a prohibition to apply. So we have this. And after the evaluation, the names are published, yes. So
you can actually look at the panels that were 2 years beforehand and see if
you can see, yeah, you can deduce that likely some people will be the same. We have a renewal, continuous renewal, so we won't be 100% match, but it won't be a complete reshuffle. It's true what you're saying that they sit for some years, yeah.
But what about the gender difference? I mean, do you feel that the gender, if you look, when you show you the picture here, you don't say anything about if you can see a gender difference between if it's a lot of women that receive grants or not, and if that is reflecting on the panels.
Okay, so on just like we have an enormous concentration of grants from some institutions, we have an enormous concentration of grants of men. It's like that, huh? So we don't sort of do this political tra-la-la in order to accommodate certain countries, certain genders, certain whatever, you know? So we really go only for excellence. Now, you can have unconscious biases and things like that, saying that the panel members, even if they are super honest and really, you know, truly honest, but they somehow subconsciously will put a higher requirement on women because that's how society works. Now, these are the kind of things we're struggling with, and we're actually organizing workshops in the ERC agency to discuss these things. There is a working group, a standing working group of the Scientific Council that meets every time the Scientific Council meets to discuss how do we address the gender problem, because this is a problem. The problem is, though, that in the last calls of this, if I recall correctly now, the calls of starting grant, consolidated and advanced, I think almost all 3 of them, to a greater or lesser extent in 2013, you had a certain number of women applying, and the success rate of women was lower than that of men. It's a fact. The success rate in relation to submitted applications women was lower. And sometimes that was quite pronounced, which is very sad. And all we can do is try to say to the panel members that, look, don't forget you may have an unconscious bias. Don't forget you may penalize women who've been on a maternity leave, thinking they've been on holiday, or, you know, all these things. Now, that's on the sort of the content side. Then on the terms of representation in the panels, now, even if you have a lot of women in a panel, because particularly in social sciences panels, you have that, but you see the same effect. The women are very tough against other women. Huh? It is like that. You can see that. So you're getting to a point you have to struggle sort of against general societal problems that we're all facing, whether it's in ERC or outside. We're all facing sort of this women hurdles, huh? And it's evident here as well. We're doing what we can to help to raise awareness, and to fight against it. But we haven't gotten sort of to the point that we sort of allocate funds for women or allocate funds for certain countries or allocate funds for certain things. We really, you know, the line is excellence only, tough competition, and the results are what they are. And now we have to try sort of working on the various issues, like widening participation. There are countries with 4,500 projects at the end of FP7. There are EU countries who don't have a single grant. Not one out of 4,500. So we don't do anything special for them, other than we help them, we advise them, you know, all these things. We have to work like that. But that's the mandate we have, and that's why ERC is liked, that we don't do sort of these political things for all sorts of, you know, compromises, if you like. That's a good question. Other questions?
I have another question. I would like to go back to the question about restrictions in the application procedure.
Yes.
The new rules will be for Horizon 2020.
Yeah, for future.
Okay.
So it's not that if you got the C last year that you will have to wait 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
It's as of 2014. Yeah. Which means that you should think twice before you submit. Am I really mature with my research? Not where I said, oh, ERC has a call, boop, submit. Is this the right timing? Do I need to publish that publication I have in the pipeline first? Wait till next year, maybe? That's the kind of thinking we hope to see, to get a bit higher quality, get people to think a little bit more before they submit.
Is it possible to get an A and not getting funded?
Yes. Yes. Maybe I wasn't so clear there. Yeah. So the panel decides who is good enough to be funded, who would we like to see funded. It's not for them to decide who is going to get the money. They just make a rank list. 1, 2, 3, and then the money runs out. Very short reserve list of those only who we think really could get a chance to be funded because money can come into the system later on. There's all sorts of reasons. But then you will have, not in every panel, but in most panels, you will have some proposals that were considered. We would have liked to fund this if we had had the money. And those A's are non-funded A's. And many countries, not all, but many countries say, oh, that's interesting. You've done the job for us. They are competitive at international level. We don't hesitate to fund them. Maybe not at a high amount, but something. A's can apply the year after, yeah. Yeah.
I would like to mention that in Sweden, the Swedish Research Council actually funds the A's that not receive funding, but the requirement is that they make it to the reserve list. So that's important distinctions for those of you that working at the grants office. So
they make it to the reserve list?
Yes, but they do not get funding.
But the reserve list is very short. It's maybe 1 or 2 proposals. And we all
the reserve list has for each domain, as far as the ones from last year, around 10 applications per domain. So it's true that it will be very few Swedish applicants or Sweden-based applicants on that list. But that's how the conditions look like this year.
But then the country may decide, okay, well, we don't have 2.5 million euros to give to the person, or we may have 800,000 or something like that, which is, whatever.
Yes, definitely. That's a decision that the management has to do. At this point, the grants that we have are very generous, and therefore we want to have the very excellent ones that didn't get the money but were considered to be as good as the ones receiving the money. So at this point, they're receiving 2 million crowns per year for 5 years. So it's not as much as what they could get from the ERC, but quite close.
Okay.
Is there? So my name is Anna Rosling and I'm from Uppsala University. I have a question about deductible time on these 2 to 7 years and 7 to 10. How are they fixed, and with
for maternity leaves, for
instance,
example? Yeah. Yes, it's all in the rules. So you mean the details?
No, the thing is that I've been told when I've been in contact with different grant offices that it doesn't look serious if you deduct 1.5 years per child.
Oh.
Which is...
We are very keen to really emphasize to the panel members that the rules are what they are. I mean, so they are free to operate and give their opinion about scientific excellence and so on, but they have to respect the framework. And the framework gives a certain provisions, for example, for maternity leaves. And you know, they are not welcome to have opinions saying she took too long maternity leave, she should have taken 3 months, or this sort of things. Huh? This is not welcome. So and it's a very important gender issue, obviously. Huh? There is a lot of fear out there among the applicants that they try to hide that they had to take maternity leave or not show it in the CV. But we are really keen to emphasize that this should not be against you. There is a quite generous allowed time extra that you can add if you have had children, for example. But there is a maximum to that time, which I think allows you 3 children or something if you use the maximum time. So again, you know, we are very gender aware in our briefings, but we cannot control the brains of the panel members. Huh? We can't sort of. There's a certain point that we cannot go further. So if there is unconscious bias, as you say, unconscious bias against women who take too long maternity leaves, yeah, we'll have to work, you know, hard to change people's opinions and get them above that and judge the scientific ID and the CV of the person above those things. Huh? But I can agree, it's easier said than done. But I don't think there should be. We are concerned when we see that women are afraid to show that they have had children, for example. They don't want to show it in their CV. And that's a concern. That's just not good. But I cannot control how the panel members are acting. Yes. I think those are very interesting questions that you raised, by the way.
Hello, my name is Jana Ayubi, representing KTH. I have 2 questions. One is a continuation of the maternity leave. If the person is taking maternity leave during the lifetime of the project, will it be a justified cause for prolonging the project in the future?
Yes.
Okay. And the second question concerns redress procedures, because you haven't mentioned anything about it. And my question is how ERC sees it, how it's taken care of, redress, and the causes that brings it to a change decision on the granting. Any stories, any use of making a redress if a certain person experienced the review procedure or the interview procedure as something went wrong and he feels that something was wrong, he was treated badly, or well.
Okay. A redress can be raised on any ground if somebody feels that something hasn't been right. Now, there are 2 aspects. One is procedures, and the other thing is I didn't like the comments, or I don't agree with the comments, or the comments in the feedback that justified my rejection are actually completely erroneous. It shows that the experts don't know what they're talking about. This is a very common reaction that you can feel. Now, if you receive it, if you are of that opinion, you can submit a redress. It would be analyzed. Very often it would be, okay, that's the view of the panel, this is the view of the applicant, opinion against opinion, and then it will go to, if it needs really serious investigation, if it's that type of case, it will be looked at as such. We have sometimes successful redresses that it shows that yes, the applicants was right, there was a mistake or whatever. I mean, we're talking about, we have 4,500 projects, it means that we have tens of thousands of applications over the years. So some things can go wrong somewhere by mistake, obviously. It's hard to be sort of totally perfect. So yes, and every redress case is taken seriously. It's not to be seen as, I was rejected, take a second chance to see if I can give. It's not sort of an invitation to a new round. You need to have a good reason, and you need to believe yourself in your own reason. Most people do accept the justifications for the rejection. You also need to be aware there's always competition. I have a good proposal, I was rejected. Yeah, it's a good proposal, but it wasn't good enough because there were others that were better. So just because you have a good proposal and you were rejected in itself is not a reason to redress, because the money is limited. And we talked about all those A grades that we didn't have the money for. So people can redress because they were the budget was cut too much. It happens. So, you know, if you feel that something wasn't right, you can redress, and it will be seriously looked at. And a minority, but some very few actually, in the end, you know, are reevaluated, and actually it happens, although very rarely, that you know, they succeed.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know, because some people ask us at the grants office if there is any use to make a redress or not, or it's just wasting time. There will be no success.
It's a use
anyway.
if there's a real serious reason that you really consider this you know, this is absolutely, you know, incorrect what I have received. You know? But if it's just I'm not happy because I have a good proposal and I failed. Okay, they are right in the remarks, but I still have a good proposal. I should have been funded. It's probably a result of the fact that others were better.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Tobias from KTH as well, and I'm wondering if you know about how it will be in the next years. So do you know that the dates of the calls will be released in December again, and will the deadlines for submission also always in spring or distributed as now over the year?
We have our planning. We need to have the planning for staff resources for all sorts of reasons. However, there are sometimes surprises regarding the finances and the member states' willingness to put forward the money, which sometimes gives us surprises in terms of calendar planning. So although we have a plan, there is an indicative plan already published in the work program for the 2015, but it's indicative and it can change. Now, we are not so happy if it changes too much, because that disrupts our operations. It's an element of uncertainty, and a very unpleasant one for us, that we cannot really control our operations. And it's unpleasant for the applicants as well, obviously. But this ultimately is in the hands of member states. We need to have the finances there in order to be able to offer the calls as planned.
But does it mean that the plan is that it runs as in 2014, or does it mean that it is...
For 2014 is the work program, yes, yeah, the two calls, hold on now. All of 2014 is in the work program, and with indicative plan for 2015. You still need to have the call for the advanced grant for the autumn. The calls now are the starting grants and consolidator. So what's indicative is the 2015. Did I answer your question properly? No, I think so. The 2014 should be fine.
I have another question regarding the same, actually. I wonder, when do you open the submission system so
Yes.
you can actually go in and submit?
As soon as possible.
Because, okay, it is that, because you cannot find...
No, the reason is there's a new framework program. Everyone is in the same situation. It's probably worse if you are submitting to something else. ERC is reasonably straightforward because it hasn't changed much. It will not change much. You can always wait a bit to fill in the forms, but I know it's a headache and it's not nice for anybody. It's a stress, but we're all in the same situation. It's quite a lot of IT that needs to be worked out and function. So, but it's coming. But it's not sort of big surprises in there. More? I'm going to be around in the afternoon for informal discussions, so.
No more questions? Or everybody's just hungry? Then we will close this session and have a lunch break here. So we say temporary goodbye to our listeners at the web. And we will be starting here at 1 o'clock sharp. So make sure you will be seated here.